The moment Jasmine Paolini stepped onto the court, she thought she owned it. But she didn't count on the storm that was about to hit her. From the very first point, a young lioness refused to bow down, attacking with a hunger that shook the stadium to its core. In a brutal rally, Alex Eala didn't just hit a winner. She snatched the soul of the match. And when the final point landed, the silence wasn't from a lack of noise, but from the sheer disbelief of what we had all just witnessed. This isn't just a match, it's the redefinition of a legacy. On paper, it was a mismatch. The seasoned veteran against the rising rookie, the established force versus the unknown challenger. In the narrative of professional tennis, these are the matches where experience dictates the outcome, where the pressure of the big stage crushes the hopes of the unseeded. When Jasmine Paolini and Alex Eala walked onto the hallowed grass of Wimbledon's center court, the world expected a masterclass from the Italian. They expected precision, power, and a clinical display of dominance. They expected a routine victory. What they got was a revolution. Alex Eala didn't just arrive at Wimbledon to participate. She came with a singular, terrifying purpose: to shatter the world's expectations. The stark contrast in their walk to the net was the first sign of the storm to come. Paolini, with the calm, practiced air of a player who has been here before, looked every bit the favorite. Eala, however, was a tightly coiled spring of raw, unbridled energy. Her eyes weren't those of a starstruck rookie. They held the cold fire of an assassin. The deafening roar of the crowd was a wall of noise that would crumble lesser players. For Eala, it was merely the soundtrack to her greatest victory. As the match began, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a racket. The first few games were a feeling-out process, but Eala refused to show the slightest hint of fear. Every time Paolini tried to establish her rhythm, Eala countered with a relentless barrage of power. Her ground strokes, deep and unforgiving, pushed the Italian star far behind the baseline, forcing errors from a player not accustomed to making them. The tennis world watched in stunned silence, trying to process what they were seeing. This wasn't a challenge, it was a declaration. Eala was not just playing to win the match. She was trying to break Paolini's spirit. The underdog was serving notice that this would be a war, a brutal, high-stakes battle fought for every single point. The grass beneath their feet became a battlefield, and Eala was determined to be the last one standing. The turning point of any match is rarely a single point. It's a brutal sequence that breaks the will of an opponent. For Jasmine Paolini, that moment came in the heart of the first set. She had weathered the initial storm using her experience to stabilize the scoreline. She thought she had found a foothold. She was wrong. Alex Eala had other plans, and she executed them with ruthless precision. The point that turned the match on its head was a masterpiece of aggressive defense turning into breathtaking offense. Paolini attacked, sending Eala scrambling from one side of the court to the other. The crowd roared, anticipating a winner. Instead, they witnessed a miracle. Eala stretched, her lunge seemingly impossible, and with a flick of her wrist redirected the ball back into the court, pushing Paolini onto the back foot. It was a moment of pure, athletic genius. The momentum swung like a wrecking ball. Eala, who had been defending, suddenly saw an opportunity for a counterattack. With the speed of a panther, she pounced, sprinting to the net to crush a forehand winner down the line that left Paolini completely flat-footed. The stadium erupted, but it was a very different sound from before. It was no longer just appreciation for a good point. It was awe. It was the sound of a crowd recognizing the birth of a new sensation. The psychological blow landed with devastating effect. The look on Paolini's face shifted from frustration to a deeper, more alarming emotion, panic. She had seen this look in the mirror before, but it was usually reflected back at her opponents. Now she was on the receiving end of a relentless onslaught. Eala fed off that energy. Each gesture, each fist pump, each roar was aimed directly at her rival. She was not only winning the physical battle, she was conquering the mental one. Paolini's body language began to crumble, her shoulders slumping, her shots becoming tentative. She was a champion trapped in a cage with a predator. The stunning rally wasn't just a point, It was the psychological disarming of a top-tier player. It was the moment the atmosphere changed from a match to a coronation, but for the wrong player. As the match wore on, the visible frustration on Jasmine Paolini's face became a compelling subplot. This was not the script she had rehearsed. She had prepared for a challenging match, but not for this. Not for a young, fearless opponent who refused to be intimidated by her stature or her ranking. Paolini tried everything in her arsenal. She attempted to out-rally Eala, but the young phenom was matching her shot for shot, and often out-hitting her. She tried to vary the pace, using drop shots and slices to disrupt Eala's rhythm. But Eala, with the instincts of a veteran, read the plays effortlessly, chasing down drop shots and turning defense into attack. The Italian star's frustration was palpable. It wasn't just the points she was losing, it was how she was losing them. Eala's strategy was brilliantly simple, relentless aggression. She was playing with a level of freedom that only comes from having nothing to lose and everything to gain. She was swinging for the fences and her shots were finding the lines. Eala's consistency under pressure was remarkable. She was landing deep, heavy balls that pinned Paolini to the baseline, preventing her from using her own powerful forehand to dictate the play. This constant pressure forced errors from a player who prided herself on her consistency. The crowd, sensing the upset, began to shift its allegiance. The cheers for Paolini were met with an equal, if not louder, roar of approval for the underdog. It was a hostile takeover of the crowd's favor. Every time Paolini tried to assert her authority, Eala was there to slap it down. Eala's intensity was unwavering, a wall that Paolini could not penetrate. The Italian's confidence, so evident in the warm-up, was evaporating with each passing game. She started looking at her coaching box, searching for answers that were not coming. The frustration turned into anger and the anger into resignation. She was a champion, but on this day, on this court, she was being outplayed, outthought, and outfought. The realization was beginning to sink in. She was not just losing a match. She was being dismantled by a player who had arrived on the world's biggest stage with a win-at-all-costs mentality. The final set was a masterclass in pressure and a testament to the unyielding spirit of Alex Eala. It was a dismantling, a systematic destruction of everything Jasmine Paolini represented. The Italian, a player whose legacy was built on resilience, was visibly crumbling. Her service games, once a weapon, were now a liability. The double faults began to pile up, a clear sign of a player whose mind was racing ahead of her body. Eala, in stark contrast, remained serene. She was in the zone, a heightened state of awareness where every shot felt predestined. She was painting the lines with an artist's precision, hitting angles that seemed impossible. Paolini was no longer just playing against Eala. She was fighting a losing battle against the relentless pressure and the growing weight of an impending upset. The turning point in the final set came with a string of stunning forehand winners from Eala. These were not just good shots, they were statements of intent. The depth and power were such that Paolini could only stand and watch as the ball flew past her. The court seemed to shrink for Paolini while expanding for Eala. The champion was being undone not by her own errors, but by the sheer brilliance of her opponent. The mental and emotional drain was beginning to show on Paolini's face. The once bright eyes had dulled, replaced by a look of defeat. She had tried everything. She had changed tactics, argued with herself, and even tried to engage the crowd, but nothing was working. Eala, on the other hand, looked like she was just getting started. She was not just winning, she was dominating. With each winner, the crowd's roar grew louder, the belief that they were witnessing something historic growing with every point. The dream of an upset was no longer a far-fetched notion. It was becoming a reality. Paolini's serve, which had been her sanctuary, became a point of attack for the young Filipino. She was reading it like a book, anticipating the direction and hammering back winners. The match was spiraling out of Paolini's control, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The unraveling of her legacy was happening in real time, and the entire tennis world was watching. The final moments of the match were an emotional crescendo, a sequence of events that will be replayed in tennis highlights for years to come. It all came down to match point. The stadium fell into an eerie silence, the kind that precedes a moment of profound significance. All eyes were on Alex Eala. Here it was, the pressure of the entire world on her shoulders, the chance to secure the biggest win of her young career. To win Wimbledon, you must seize the moment. Jasmine Paolini, serving to stay in the match, looked across the net at this composed, fearless young woman who had just dismantled her entire game. With nerves of steel, Eala stepped up. The serve came in, but Eala was ready. She returned it with a deep, powerful stroke that pushed Paolini back. Then she saw the opportunity. The court opened up, and the only thought in her mind was finish. The shot was a masterpiece. A clean, crisp winner that kissed the baseline. Paolini could only watch it fly past her. The ball hit the grass, and the match was over. The silence in the stadium was a collective intake of breath, followed by an explosion of noise. Alex Eala had done it. She had stunned the tennis world. She had shocked Jasmine Paolini. She had won at Wimbledon. The camera panned to Paolini, whose shoulders slumped in utter defeat. She packed her bag in a daze, a champion dethroned. But the true emotion was captured in the face of the victor. Eala dropped to her knees. The years of sacrifice, the endless hours of training, the relentless pursuit of a dream, all flooding out of her in a single cathartic moment. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of joy, relief, and sheer disbelief. The young champion rose to acknowledge the crowd, who gave her a standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the All England club. In that moment, Alex Eala wasn't just a name on a draw sheet. She was a symbol of belief, a testament to the power of perseverance. Her victory was more than just an upset. It was a passing of the torch. It was a moment that will echo through the halls of tennis history, a stunning reminder that in sports, the heart and spirit of an underdog can conquer all. The tennis world is now on notice. A new star was born. If you enjoyed this latest tennis update and want to stay ahead of the biggest stories in the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to World Zone right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the action. See you in the next video.